Jesus told the crowd all these things in parables. Without a parable, he told them nothing. Over the last few weeks, our gospel readings have taken us through the many parables that Jesus offers in Matthew 13. We started with the parable of the sower and jumped to Jesus telling the disciples what exactly he meant. Last week, we heard the parable of the wheat and the weeds, and then, similarly to that first week, skipped a bunch of verses to get to the explanation. This week, we've popped back to fill in a couple of the stories Jesus had shared with the entire crowd, and then leapfrog forward once again to the final 3 parables, which he appears to have told a smaller group of followers. With parables being rooted in the concepts of simile and analogy, it's easy for us to get caught up in the details. After all, what good is a parable if you can't figure it out? Combine that curiosity with our American sense of individualism, and we frequently end up going beyond simply trying to understand what the story means to attempting to search out the me aspect of what it all is. What kind of soil am I? Am I the good seed or the bad? What's my role in the parable of the yeast or the hidden treasure or the pearl? When I'm scooped up in that net, will God decide that I'm worth keeping, or will I be tossed into the fire? People have wondered and worried about these kinds of questions for generations, leaving a plethora of books and sermons in their wake. But our intense interest in those more detailed aspects of the tales frequently leads us to overlook the primary point. We need to recognize that these parables aren't really about you or me or dirt or weeds or fish or dough or seeds or even what any of those particular items might represent or mean. There's absolutely no secret to the focus of these tales. Jesus sets his intention in front of us repeatedly. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in the field. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. The kingdom of heaven is like a net. All of these stories we hear are, first and foremost, about the kingdom of heaven, which means that any interpretations we might draw from them ought to find their base in that truth. As I've been thinking through all of these parables the last few weeks, one common aspect has begun to emerge for me: the concept of harvest. It's certainly easier to see that in the stories about plants and fishing, but it's there in the others as well, although more in line with our idea of a big win or a payoff. What's the kingdom of heaven like? It's like planting seeds and awaiting the grain. It's like kneading yeast into flour and waiting for the dough to rise. It's like selling everything in order to buy something far more precious. It's like dragging a net out of the sea and sorting through the catch within. It's all about exchanging the labor or the less valuable for something more desirable. Now, one thing to note here is that neither the kingdom of heaven nor Jesus' reference to the end of the age are necessarily the equivalent of what we think of as the capital EW end of the world. The meaning is more like our concept of the end of an era. It's like how historical ages transition. Ancient Roman society gave way to the medieval age, which eventually gave way to the modern age. Or how computers the size of rooms developed into mainframe systems that were eventually replaced by home PCs that have ultimately led to the current Internet of Things, where our thermostats, light bulbs, and even toothbrushes have more technology and processing power packed into them than entire buildings full of those calculating machines from only 60 years ago. Despite our imaginations and expectations of vast destruction, along with the erasure of humanity as we know it, the end of the age does not have to be a bad thing. Yes, some doors close. Following along with the development of computers, programming languages come and go. Software platforms rise and fall. The structural basis of what technology even is may appear entirely unrelated to what it was in the past. The hottest skill sets become passé, while new ones constantly evolve to prepare for what's next. When we appreciate the outcome, we forget just how hard those changes can be. They involve not only a lot of work, but for some, a continual experience of loss. It's okay to mourn those formerly successful and important aspects of our lives as they age into history. But the world keeps turning, the future keeps coming, and life flows on. Here at St. Andrew's, we have our own end of the age to address. We've experienced a number of remarkable successes since our founding. Multiple generations of faithful parishioners, building expansions, the beginnings of El Caldito and the Community of Hope, and launching the Hospitality House, to name a few. We've had some truly impressive family programming and stellar music over the years. Swing to the present, and our people are still participating in a lot of great stuff, continuing to support some of those early ministries while nurturing new ones like Circles of Hope and Second Sunday Suppers, and sponsoring other gift and service projects. All of these things are harvests worth celebrating. However, along with the rest of the world, Las Cruces has been changing underneath our feet for decades. And surviving the pandemic has made the close of that earlier era all too clear. It's time to make plans to move beyond the desire simply to survive upheaval and turn to efforts that allow us to truly thrive. So then, how do we face our new world? How do we look ahead and plan for the next harvest? After the service, we're going to be introducing plans for some listening sessions for the congregation. These are going to be opportunities for you to celebrate things you love about St. Andrew's, discuss things that you think could use some improving or updating, and dream up what might still be to come. It's a chance to appreciate who we have been, consider the realities of who we are right now, and then begin making practical steps toward what we hope to be in the future. So what would we like St. Andrew's to look like in the future? What and how would we like to grow over the next decade or so? What have we planted that we need to continue to tend? And what other crops might thrive in our changing climate? These are the kinds of things we need to consider together, to imagine what we hope the kingdom of heaven might look like in years to come. We're experiencing a transition, the end of one era, but this isn't the end of the world. And Jesus didn't offer us these parables in the past few weeks simply to give us insight into the end. He's encouraging us to prepare for the coming harvest, to be aware of the efforts needed to adapt along the way, and to plan for the outcome we hope might yet arrive. The point isn't to reject the past or to ignore the needs of the present, but to dream, discover, and develop what may yet be. To wonder together, where and how do we grow from here? To ask, the kingdom of heaven is like... Amen.